So our first speaker today is Professor Anja Matwijikiw from the Department of Philosophy, History, Philosophy, Political Science, and Religious Studies, and Professor of Psychology. And she'll be speaking to us today on international responsibility from law and politics to law, philosophy, and ethics.
A warm welcome to this research event, which is a component of the bicentennial celebration of the founding of the Indiana University. I'm Anja Matwijikiw, and I am a professor of philosophy. I specialize in interdisciplinary research, which creates syntheses between law at the national and international levels, ethics, philosophy per se, and political thought. I'm particularly interested in dynamic developments towards global law, global policy, and global governance, and with a view to questions of fundamental values and threats to these fundamental values as caused by conflict, such as war, which is the conventional scenario, but also tyranny or consolidated authoritarianism, as Freedom House calls it, or systemic weaknesses which affect not only political and civil human rights, but also economic and social human rights. And this is important because there is room for progress. There is room for further dynamic developments in international law. And two that I can mention, and where I participate in a push for progress, is grand corruption, which is inconsistent with democracy, in part because of the widespread socioeconomic harms that it produces, but also ecocide, which is a crime that concerns the most serious environmental violations, and yet it is not recognized under international law. And the same is true of grand corruption, although Transparency International is taking steps towards a definition that everybody can agree on, because that is a challenge. So the area that I am looking at is international responsibility as state responsibility, and that is the area that concerns the limits for states as a concept that is captured by the terminology of internationally wrongful acts. And the framework for these internationally wrongful acts were ones that the United Nations took steps toward. And then at an early stage, historically you could say, because it started in 1949 with the International Law Commission selecting the topic of state responsibility as a type of international responsibility as a topic for codification, that is a written law, which is also the conventional paradigm under international law. So state responsibility is firmly anchored in the 1949 Charter of the United States, and as you can see here, it's mixing values, it's mixing human rights, and it's mixing respect for equal sovereignty of the members, that is, the states. But it's also mixing other fundamental values, such as justice, peace, and security, and with a view to preventing threats to peace and security. So one of the crimes that can be inferred from this early framework is the crime of aggression. That is one of the core international crimes. It is a very small class of crimes, and they reach the highest level of international law. Peremptory norms of general international law, or jus cogens norms for short. So as you can see here, they're not just fundamental values, they're also values that are universally applicable. They may trump express state consent, It's a doctrinal discussion, but that is the idea behind them. And so they're not just the norms and rules that are superior to all other international rules. There can be no derogation from them. In other words, all states have to conform, to comply. So if you look more closely at peremptory norms of international law, you will see a short list, and you could even say with some hesitation, because the International Law Commission decided in 2001 to make a list of non-exhaustive examples. The prohibition of aggression happens to be at the very top, which is also a current issue. It is not limited to the United Nations to issue global policies. For example, the Parliamentary Assembly of the European Council issued a 2023 resolution, 2023, resolution to call for accountability in the case of Russia and the crime of aggression. There can be no impunity for these because of their special status. And then you can see between the more state-oriented interest on the public international law, namely to avoid violations of equal sovereignty and the right to self-determination, you can see sandwiched in between them the fundamental human rights expressed in core international crimes. But public international law also accommodates humanitarian law, so it is a broad notion. Only Article 40 of this fairly new instrument, the draft Articles on Responsibility of States for Internationally Wrongful Acts, actually cover these most serious breaches that rise to the Jus Cogens level. And then you may ask, but why? Since the General Assembly actually deemed this topic very important at a very early stage, and the International Law Commission put it on its provisional list in 1949 at its very first session as a topic for codification. Well, politics is in the equation. Progress doesn't happen automatically, and you have to therefore push for developments because of factors such as pointed out by Philip Sanders, the innate conservatism of lawmakers. So even though drafters, such as the experts that served on the Commission for ASIVA, the draft articles, appointed in their own individual expert capacity, states still have an opportunity to give their comments and observations, and they will affect law, and we've seen that in the case of the ASIVA as well. So here you see the timeline. We're still looking at a work in progress, because in 2022, we had that non-exhaustive list. Genocide is on it, but you don't see ecocide, and you don't see grand corruption, and that is what I am pushing for under the auspices of the International Progress Organization. So this will come out in May, and will be an attempt to challenge the innate conservatism at all levels, including the political and legal levels, by using law per se to show that they are wrong and we are right about excluding these norms. Thank you.